illnesses, including those of all my doctors. The dialogue included in this book most often came directly from journal entries written promptly after the events described, though a few of the more recent ones are recreated from my memory. Interviews were recorded, transcribed, and condensed for inclusion, or in some cases conducted via online exchanges. Finally, it should be noted that any and all references to the X-Files or any other popular cultural phenomenon are not nearly as gratuitous as they may at first appear. Abby Norman, June 2017. Prologue. Illness is the night side of life, a more onerous citizenship. Everyone who is born holds dual citizenship, in the kingdom of the well and in the kingdom of the sick. Susan Sontag, Illness as Metaphor. It all started when I took what I now consider to be the worst shower of my life. I was a sophomore at Sarah Lawrence College, living with my roommate Rebecca in a small house on campus. It was entirely unremarkable, except for the giant katydid that had spent weeks living above our bedroom door. Rebecca had groaned in her sleep when my alarm went off, burying her head under her pillow. This was always our first exchange in the morning, even if she wasn't conscious for it. We'd met the first week of freshman year, and our sense of humor and taste for hummus and good coffee had made us fast friends. I was a bit frantic by nature, always early, generally a bit wary of life. Rebecca was more laid back, except where social justice was concerned. In that domain, she was all action and advocacy, which inspired me from the outset. In general, she engaged in age-appropriate life experiences with gusto, while I was more hesitant. She was also the antithesis of a morning person. I had rolled out of bed on that otherwise unremarkable morning, having had no premonitions of terror in my sleep. I grabbed my towel and shower caddy, opened the door, and glanced at that freakish katydid as I padded down the hall to the bathroom. I remember looking out the small window that faced campus as I undressed, the hour early enough that the world was quiet and still. The leaves had begun to change, but fall in New York could not rival the fire trees of where I had grown up in Maine. I'm from what you might call sturdy New England stock, and I had all but shed the lingering jowliness of a Maine accent. I wasn't ashamed of where I'd come from, quite the contrary. I carried myself with what I'm sure was a rather pronounced affectation of New England pragmatism that bordered on elitism, despite the fact that I'd grown up in a seaport, about as unpretentious as you can get. Although I had no intention of living in Maine ever again, having arrived in New York full stop at 18 as many people do, I did sometimes miss its breathtaking natural beauty. New York City was stunning too, but in a very different way. I'd never been in the shadows of such tall buildings before, and the pulse of the city thrummed in me long after I'd boarded the Metro North back to Bronxville. But I'd grown up a stone's throw from the ocean, in a town whose maritime history was inextricably linked with my own. We were all the descendants of sea captains, and the seashore was often the only place I'd felt safe and protected as a child. I would lie down in the wet sand, cross my arms over my chest, and wait for the waves to come in and break against me. As they receded, they would pull me into a tepid embrace that was warmer than anything I'd received from the human beings in my life. Miles and years and states away, I stuck my hand in the shower, letting the warm water wake up my fingers. Down the hall, bongo drums began to thump, filling me with a sense of prescient nostalgia. As I stepped into the tub and pulled the curtain closed, I wondered, half asleep, if I was in the process of solidifying a memory. That's when it happened, and it was as sudden as a thunderclap. A stabbing pain in my middle, as though I were on the receiving end of an unseen assailant's invisible knife. I was immediately jolted awake, eyes wide and stinging. I pressed a hand against my side, trying to determine exactly where it hurt. It felt like it was everywhere and nowhere all at once. It was almost as though something had snapped deep inside me. I'd never experienced anything like it.